All right, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's a Superman. We're back. Family Movie Time Podcast, Superman 2025. I'm here with Nick. This is Jeff, your host. Family Movie Time Podcast. We're going to talk about Superman from 2025, and we'll leave some space later on in the episode to talk about the Superman universe at large and some of the other films. I'm really excited to have Nick today as my guest, and I will confess up front that Nick knows a lot more about Superman than I do. However, I did see this film in the theater this year in 2025. So I do have that recollection and frame of reference. And the Christopher Reeve films I enjoyed as a young man. And also, I revisited some of the Christopher Reeve films recently, including Quest for Peace. And as far as the comic books, as a kid, I had some of the comic books. I do remember some of the darker ones, like the Doomsday issues, and like when Superman's, getting when he's struggling, he's getting beat up, and then the other Supermen and Superman beings were coming in to help him. I remember those. It's kind of hazy, but I remember having some of those comic books as a kid. So, but without further ado, Nick, I'm going to give you the mic, and thank you again for being here. And I'm excited to do this. So I'll mute myself and let you talk for a bit.
All right, thanks. Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. And of course, as you said before, I mean, love Superman. I'm glad to be talking about Superman. I'm actually glad that it feels like this movie, and especially, James Gunn with the DC universe has gotten him back into the public consciousness quite a bit. Uh, yeah, no, I love Superman. I know the exact Superman comic you're talking about. It's the death of Superman and reign of the Supermen when, yeah, Doomsday, he and Doomsday duke it out to the death. And of course, because it's comic books, characters never stay dead except for Uncle Ben, hopefully. But that's another universe. But yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Where you get Superboy and Cyborg Superman, who's actually a villain. Cyborg, yeah, the Cyborg Superman is a villain, and Steel, who that was actually made into a movie with Shaquille O'Neal and the Eradicator, and then, of course, like I said, Superman comes back in the neat black and silver costume. I know, and they actually have a Sega game based on that I got on an emulator. I'm gonna play it at a certain point. As I got to get through a bunch of other stuff, but yeah, no, I love the Superman character. I've loved the character since about I was 7. It was about, matter of fact, probably about 30 years ago. Getting old. 30 years ago, that they had a toy line called Superman Man of Steel based on the comic books of that time, not just seeing these commercials just hammered on TV. And then it's like, oh, I want these toys. And a friend of mine, good friend of mine, still my friend to this day, he had this 13-inch Superman, like he had a cloth costume and cape. And I was like, I want that for my birthday. And but then my mom let me get the Superman action figure. It was like a 2-pack where it's Superman and this red skinned villain named Massacre, and it came with a comic book. So got that. Went to Blockbuster saying, "Oh, I want to rent Superman the movie." Could only rent Superman 4, and now here we are. But yeah, I really enjoyed this new movie. I thought it did right by the character. I know that's not the most popular sentiment, but I'm kind of watch it probably more than I need to at this point.
When you saw it in the theater, because I saw it in the theater, but I want to hear your experience. You said you saw it twice in the theater. What were those experiences like?
Well, the first time I saw it in the theater was with a couple of mine and our mutual friend Brian's friend, our friends. We went and saw it, and the moment I heard it was David Fleming and John Murphy's rendition of the Superman theme that John Williams created, I was kind of starting to like tear up, but I was like, I don't know, that there's something in me where I was like, no, don't do this, don't do this. But I loved hearing it, and I still to this day, I actually bought the soundtrack because of that, and it was just I was sitting there. eating it up just visually. Just my eyes were glued to the screen. I was reacting well. Matter of fact, I wish I would have actually. I don't know if you could see this, but I bought this cup from the theater. It's like one of these movie theater
Yeah, I
cups.
can see the lid has the Superman
Oh
on
yes,
it,
I
and then yeah, the front and the straw. I can see it. Yeah,
might still light. Oh, it still lights up
yeah, the
too.
blue, bluish purple lights. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I had to buy that, but it was just fun. And luckily, when we left the theater, my friends and I, we all, gave it, solid marks. I personally, this is a little controversial opinion. This might be my favorite live action Superman movie so far. Of course, I'm gonna wait until Man of Tomorrow comes out in like less than 2 years, about 2.5 years or 1.5 years. Sorry, my math is bad. But the second time I saw it. Obviously, now I have more of a critical eye because I'd already, gotten used to it. And the pacing was still like it's just a fast movie. Like you could get through this and you're not like, oh my goodness, this part sinks. It's always constantly moving for better or worse. But yeah, we also took another one of mine and Brian's friend. We took his son to see it, and he's 4 years old, could be five. He enjoyed it. We had to get him a Superman shirt with a cape. Well, it was my idea. I was like, you have to wear a Superman shirt, and he seemed to enjoy it. The people I've seen it with, we've been all about that movie. So I'm just glad that this movie exists, and I'm just glad that Superman is back. Oh, how
The
about you? What's your
Oh yeah, when I saw Superman in the theater this year, it was a pretty full theater, and it was a good time. I enjoyed like just the sound, the music, and the way he's grappling with these personal decisions and emotions and things in his personal life, things in the world, deciding, whether to intervene or not, or how to intervene, and then just navigating the contemporary landscape of people being able to comment on his decisions right away and make their feelings about his decisions known. And him also seems like grapples with other people's perception of him and asking himself deep questions in this movie. And yeah, that's like the stuff that stood out, I would say, the most. Yeah.
Yeah. See, yeah, you brought up a point about the world reacting to him. And it feels like, yes, the world is definitely like whatever's being thrown his way, mainly by Lex Luthor. It does get to him. And so on that level, one of the things that I like about this movie is that it does throw him emotional problems, some little distresses or stuff like that. But then it also has the physical problem. So he's emotionally vulnerable and he's physically vulnerable because he's, fighting these villains who can take him on.
What do you think this film, the 2025 movie? I don't think there were a lot of was maybe I missed it, but this year were there a lot of superhero movies released in theaters?
Didn't feel like that much, which in my opinion is a good thing, kind of scale back, make it feel special again. That's what I
Yeah.
remember when Spider-Man came out. That was special because there weren't that many of these things around. But yeah, there was Captain America: Brave New World, which it was okay. Thunderbolts, I actually recommend that one. Goes into depression and stuff like that. Then there was this movie, and then there was the Fantastic Four: First Steps, which I also enjoyed. Uh, that movie and this one seem to be they keep talking about how like they return to like these kind of lighter, more colorful, creative worlds, and it's true because of the way the 1960s retro future and aesthetic in Fantastic Four is, and the colorful costumes as compared to the 2015 Fantastic Four, which I never saw. But then again, you get the Superman where he's got the this vivid blue and the red and the yellow. He's got the yellow S back on the cape, which I loved. and you got Crypto, and you got Kaiju, and Metropolis looks more stylized, and they're really making it feel like the comic books and like the animated series, and which I mean, to me, to this day, I think the animated series is my favorite adaptation of Superman all around. But to see parts of that, parts of the comics, parts of even the Christopher Reeve movies in there, it makes it feel special, and it makes it feel like this was really like, not, no offense to Zack Snyder and David Goyer, the people behind Man of Steel, which I like. I watched that movie. It felt like James Gunn really loved Superman.
With this 2025 movie, Superman, do you think it has more to say about like, you know, the society we live in right now, the world we live in right now, compared to the other superhero movies of 2025?
That's a good question. I mean, I'd have to go back and rewatch Thunderbolts. I would say probably because there's social media, all of that stuff has a factor. You know, online hate, which with the monkeys, it's such that's not too dissimilar from what we're dealing with now. And of course, a lot of people say, they draw comparisons to what was going on with Russia, Ukraine, or Israel and Gaza with the Jarinpur and Moravia conflict. And it's like, imagine, I mean, I guess you can. That's perfectly fair. That's what art does. But you drop a superhuman into a situation like that, and then it's like, maybe this is how it would play out. So I think it is kind of doing that, but not directly like saying, yes, this is an allegory for it. It's just like, hey, this is the canvas, and whatever you see is whatever it reflects it. But I think it's also filtered through, what if this stuff was happening, but there was this guy who is such a good guy who can do make a difference in the world. Because I mean, imagine if I mean, I don't know how people feel. I don't want to get too much into politics and take sides, but imagine, somebody from Gaza, something bad's happening, but then they have a Superman flag planted, and they think, oh, I got this guy who's gonna come. He helped us out before. This is my guy. I'm going to put my faith in him. But then other people arrive who were inspired by him.
In regards to mental health, do you think Superman 2025 goes more into mental health issues or alluding to it or metaphorically compared to other Superman movies or the recent Superman movies, from years not too far back?
I would probably say so, because there's that little crisis of identity that Superman has regarding his biological parents. It feels like they tried with like the Snyder and Cavill Superman, but they kind of just missed the mark. But I definitely think that if anything, that part, the mental health part, might have been a tad overshadowed by like how the pacing and how quick it moves, and how it's trying to get from point A to point B, and has its own message of like being optimistic, and not, and being the kindness is the new punk rock. But I think you could see little pieces here and there.
What about the blending or the marriage or the combination of like special effects and then the live action element? Because ultimately it's a live action movie. The dog, of course, is not a real dog. It's a special effects digitally created dog. Yeah, what's your take on the way they blended both of those worlds to create the film?
Oh yeah, it works for me. I mean, obviously there are tiny things you can see here or there where it's like, okay, the CGI might be a little spotty here, but it for me it worked. Like that kaiju, whenever you see it, I believe that thing is there, and I'm glad that thing doesn't exist. Because I mean, it was just like, at first it's funny because it starts off a little goofy, like, it's tiny, and just like sets something on fire, and then it becomes this big threat. But then I think it does blend it. Like, one of my favorite scenes visually and I was actually watching it this morning, again, obsessed, was when he, after Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, and Hawkgirl confront him about the message, he says, "Oh, the message can't be real." And he's like, "Yes, it can." And then he's like, "Where'd you get the message?" He takes off, and you see this like the way that the camera goes around Superman, but like it's really close to him, and he's flying, and like it depicts his speed, like the speed that he's moving at. And I even like some of the stuff when he leaves the Fortress of Solitude to go back to Metropolis in the very beginning, and it's like the way he goes, so like they demonstrate his speed, his flying speed so well, like how it just like seamlessly goes from like the ice and snow to about to the water, and then he does like the little barrel roll and so on. And of course the weird design of the pocket universe, how I noticed where it's like certain parts of it, if you're looking at it, it feels like it's upside down. Like he might be laying here, the block is here, but then like the ground that we would walk on is here. So he's like kind of it's really weird, but it is visually, in my opinion, is it's visually appealing.
The Pocket Universe, you brought that up. I just thought of kind of the aesthetic or the production design or the way it looked reminded me of like something from like Dark City, The Matrix, that kind of um, rundown, like the ruins of the universe,
Yes,
undeveloped
yes.
or industrial. Yeah, that was an interesting way to present that, Pocket Universe world.
Yeah, but I also like that Lex would also set up an area for like his workers and computers, and where he had his crypto trapped in that little bubble thing where he's like chasing the flying squirrels, and he, and I like the color of it and the design of it, and how when it tears apart, you see it looks like a completely different, like a sky, as a, is that the Proton River, which is like basically looks like a living rainbow of colors. It looks like you kind of want to jump in it, but then you know you can't because you instantly vaporize.
What about the scene? Speaking of the colors in the film, the lighting, the colors, there's a scene with Lois where they're in it's at night. I don't know if it's an apartment building, but they're like in a high rise. And behind them you can see outside like the colors in the sky. Like that was very just like charming, but also I don't know what's the word, like entrancing, or
Yeah,
it was
well,
kind of fun just to watch that floating behind them. Yeah, what was your take on that scene?
yeah. Well, visually, yeah, when they're in Clark's apartment and you get to see Peacemaker on the TV. I thought that the lighting, especially because it's like this, well, you got this pinkish interdimensional imp, which is definitely a reference to this character, Mr. Mixus who's like an imp who kind of trolls Superman and all of that stuff, which hopefully they do bring him in eventually into one of these movies. But you see them and see Green Lantern and all of them hitting this thing, and it, it, what always sticks out to me, aside from like the way the lighting is, that neon bright, I like the bright, vivid colors hitting them, but this is going on in the background. Lois is just like, shouldn't you be out there helping? It's not like, oh my gosh, oh my godness, or oh my, sorry, I'm like tripping over a word. Oh my goodness, look at this thing. Like, she's just like, well, it's just another day. It's just another creature. And Superman's like, hey, listen, they got it, which I like too, because it's like Superman can't solve everything. But yeah, going back to the color scheme, I do think that it was smart to make, to have them kind of in darkness, but have that light source coming from the window. And
Any
yeah, it
other,
was fun.
yeah, any thoughts on the other production design elements or costume design?
Okay, the costume design. This the trunks, what they call the underwear, looks an odd, like the way it's fitted to his body looks an awful lot like his costume in the classic comic book All-Star Superman. And the colors too. And he has some designs like the neck collars also from some others. So like we're really getting, to me, I'm like, oh my God, I'm eating up all these comic book references. The S isn't like this traditional one. It's from this comic book called Kingdom Come, and it makes it look more alien. And of course, Supergirl has the same crest because of the same family, the House of L. And I like that. I like Lex Luthor's look because again, it looks like it's straight off of a comic book page, like with his particular tailored suits. And Lois, they put her in purple because throughout the history, like if you look at certain cartoons, like the 1966 cartoon New Adventures of Superman, and of course, one of this film's inspirations, Superman the animated series, and others, Lois always kind of has purple on. They even carried this over to a show called Superman and Lois, which I highly recommend. Um, where sometimes she'd be wearing purple. I guess that's Lois's favorite color, and you got Jimmy having some green, which again, that's been carried over from here to there, especially in certain comic books. You'll see them, see Jimmy with a green jacket or whatever, and Mr. Terrific looks straight. Like there's this one painting by an artist named Alex Ross straight off of that. It's almost like he just stepped like something like Vigo the Carpathian from Ghostbusters 2 just stepped right off of that. And Green Lantern. I love that they gave him the bowl cut, and that was Nathan Fillion actually was like, yeah, give him the bowl cut because it makes him look goofy because he is in the comic book he's a goofy guy. He's played to perfection by Nathan Fillion. And Hawk Girl, she has the more of the gold. I think the colors really worked in this movie's favor. The only one who might have been a little shortchanged and looked a little more generic, like kind of 2000s ish villain, was I'd say the engineer, because normally she looks like pretty much all silver, kind of like the Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four for Steps. But I guess they wanted to avoid that comparison. I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on that. But Ultraman, he was his costume was okay because normally it's not like that because he's actually not a clone of Superman. He's more of an alternate universe version of Superman on Earth 3, who's actually part of the crime syndicate of America. So he wears more of a blue and red costume with a U on it. But hey, I'll take what I can get.
How about the music? You mentioned the music early on. What else? Yeah, what else could you say about the music in the film?
Well, I liked how when you get your heroic cues and such, and put I'll put the earbuds on and put that on, and then you get the more somber or more heartfelt, I should say, cues with when he's on the farm with Jonathan Kent, and they're talking about oh, like he's explaining his issues with him, and Jonathan gives him that nice pep talk. I think it brings the action and adventure where it needs to, and then it gets a little more somber and serious when it needs to.
Dialogue. Is there any moments that you have favorite dialogue statements or scenes?
Well, all right, I got a few of them. I would say one of my favorite, for some reason, I don't know why, but I love this line when Lex is at the Pentagon with Rick Flag Sr. and all these other people. One of the guys says, "What's this kryptonite stuff called again?" And then Luther's just, "It's called kryptonite." Like he's like, "Wow, you are that dumb. You just had it. You just said it." I don't know why that gets to me. And of course, one of the lines that that sticks out to me is whenever Lois is like, "It's a dog," and he's like, "Yeah, he's not a very good one, but he's scared. He's out there, he's scared. He needs help." And then you find out that pays off because crypto isn't his dog. So you get the payoff to you get the setup and the payoff. And again, another line I loved was there's a lot of them I love, but one of them was from Guy Gardner, where Superman's like, "Oh, I wanted to take it to an intergalactic zoo or euthanize it properly." He says, "Come on, bro, don't be such a wuss." Like that's such a Guy Gardner line. And then I'd probably say for obviously the 1A, 1A, one. It's such a like it's so catchy. Like I sometimes I catch myself doing it. And then I think if I'm gonna give a line to Superman that I like, which I liked a few of his lines, I would say probably Oh wow. I think I gotta choose. I the one, at least for now, the one that sticks out to me is when, he rescues the lady from being, crushed by the kaiju. And he says, slow, deep breaths, man. Like he like almost like he knows what to do in the situation. And as others have said online, he can be a firefighter as opposed to a cop, even though there's parts where you say, oh, there's times in the comics where he's a cop where he stops crimes and such. But yeah, I think a lot of the lines worked, especially from Lex Luthor, Lois Lane, and even Eve Tessmacher. She had some funny bits.
How about the editing, the pacing, the running time? As you rewatch the film, do you ever feel like, oh, this could have been shorter, could have been longer? They could have, shortened this montage or this scene or taken out scenes that didn't really progress the storyline or the character development or the themes.
I think one scene I think they could have taken out was the part with the garage door opening. But one thing, if you go back and watch it, you'll see that there are like little parts where it kind of cuts to black for a couple of like maybe a second or so. And I heard that originally they were gonna put in like title cue cards to be like days of the week. So this movie would have been like a week in the life of Superman. I'm curious. I kind of wish they'd have kept that in. I kind of wanted to see what that would be like. Like that's a concept that we don't really get that much in superhero movies, is a week in the life of a certain character. I kind of, I don't know. I know they don't, James Gunn doesn't really do director's cuts, but I kind of wish they would have put them in for like a Blu-ray release. But I think, to me, the movie never overstays its welcome because it's that, 2 hours and a bit of change. If anything, maybe I would say they could have maybe used maybe one more Clark Kent scene, like of him in the glasses doing, his whole Daily Planet type of act, or maybe even him more like, yeah, I'd say that with him interacting with the other Daily Planet members, because he only gets like one scene with all of them. Like he not even like, he only gets to like, it's in the very beginning. So I would say that, which again, they could just do that in the new one coming out in Man of Tomorrow. Just, give them a couple of scenes like that. And I mean, other than that, I don't really have any complaints about the pacing myself. I don't know about you.
I feel like in the theater it's different than watching it at home, and that's, I mean, true for a lot of movies. With this one, maybe some of the stuff with the squirrels could have been trimmed down for me. Um, that maybe felt the slowest or a little bit redundant. Other than that, I can't really think of anything that like stood out or I've just became aware of like, how much time is left in this or, the the next thing I was going to say, um, to spend some time talking about Lois Lane and the character for the film, but also Lois in the Superman universe and maybe how she's, you know, different interpretations over the years from the comic books to the movies. Yeah, we could spend some time there.
All right, well, I'm just gonna say this. Rachel Brosnahan deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of Lois Lane portrayals, along with Dana Delaney from the DC animated universe, and I would say Erica Durance from Smallville, and I'm gonna probably say Elizabeth Togue from Superman and Lois. She was, to me, she's the best, like cinematic Lois Lane we've had. Like, she not only does she look like the character off the page, but it's the way she was grilling Superman in her interview. That is something Lois would do, and I love how I picked up on this. Like, obviously many times, but again, I was watching it this morning. Like I said before, when he says, "Oh, I'll let you interview me," she's like, "You wouldn't want that." And it's like she literally told him, you because she goes for those questions. And I love that James Gunn wrote that, and the way Rachel Brosnahan had played it was perfect. Like, even some people said the whole party like a rock star choir boy line is kind of cringe, but that feels in character for Lois herself. Like the way she was like pouring the sugar into the coffee, and how she was, how she and Jimmy had that back and forth about, where they're getting closer to the truth, uncovering the truth about Luther's scheme. I mean, everything about her, I was like, yeah, this is the lowest lane of the comic books, especially like the modern era. And I actually liked that Gunn had Lois know Clark is Superman, and had them already, in the early stages of their relationship. I think that made the dynamic work, and especially showing that she would go to Mr. Terrific and the other Justice Gang members to help rescue him. That speaks to her character, which is something she would do in the comic books too. I don't know how you felt about Lois, but that I'm like I said, I can't wait to see more of her, Lois.
Very convincing performance and, you know, solid, way to portray the character and, with being Superman's girlfriend, partner, and colleague, at the Daily Planet. It's fun. It was fun to watch their scenes together, their banter, their dynamic, the counterpoints, and the different ways that they try to agree or resolve things or
Yeah.
argue and challenge each other and like what would Superman be without her? Like what if she
Yes.
dumped him? I don't know, maybe in the comics over the years they do break up. Is that a thing ever?
Well, all right. Well, it's complicated because back in the golden and silver age, there were a whole bunch of hijinks where like it was just silliness. You know, she'd be in love with Superman, and it's like they're dancing around relationship stuff. But it wasn't until like the post-crisis era, which is 1986 onward, that they actually really developed their relationship. Whereas like Lois was, she was into Superman, but she was also into Clark's. Like she actually chose Clark. Clark reveals his identity. Eventually, they get married and even have a son who gets aged up for whatever reason. But they're still together in they're like one of the healthiest relationships in comics today. Like ever since that post-crisis era where they actually built their relationship, and it was built on that foundation of trust and love and respect, and exactly what you said. Because eventually that back and forth of, oh, does she know, does she not know, like from the 1950s Superman show, which I still watch, it could get a little like, you kind of want to see them just go ahead, get together, and they work as a couple.
Superman's an alien, right? And
Oh,
he's deciding to intervene on Earth and use his powers for good. What are your thoughts on some of that?
I mean, personally, I think that it's the old, you know, it's that old saying, what is it? Evil persists when good men do nothing. So it's like if he came here, has all these powers, and he can, but he says, I can't interfere because I gotta let the world spin. And it's like that's lives lost that were needlessly lost. So I'm okay with it. Matter of fact, Superman intervening in Jar Import in the movie does not bother me one bit. Because I'm not gonna lie, there are times where I'm like, what would I do if I had Superman's powers? No, I mean, yeah, I'd pretty much do the same thing except try to maintain my secrecy. But I mean, I guess I can't now because I just said it to the public. But he, I think it's a good thing, and one of the reasons why I love the character so much is because he will do something, and he goes against that old saying, "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." He will do something, and he's not afraid to interact with people and be friendly with them, which is something that realistically the Snyder movies were missing. Although when Joss Whedon did his cut of Justice League, you could kind of see where he was, more willing to interact with people. Even though in Man of Steel he did save people, but it wasn't like the way he was doing it in this movie, like where when all the kids come around him after the kaiju battle, and he's like high-fiving them, hey, you okay? All that stuff.
How about the depiction of violence in this Superman 2025 movie compared to, the ones over the recent years?
Well, I would say I don't know, they feel this one feels a little more stylized than the ones from the last decade. But especially when you got the Green Lantern making the construct that goes into the Kaiju's eyeball, and then Superman's like, "Come on, there's got to be better way to do this." But then you got the classic, beat 'em ups with the fists, boom, 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 and I love all that stuff. I'm a sucker for a good fight scene, and it's never too much. Even whenever they shoot that dude Molly, whenever he's doing the Russian roulette, it's you're not it's not up close personal. You don't see big blood splatter. You just see it from a distance. And I think James Gunn was doing that on purpose because it's like Superman is not just for adults or teenagers. He's for kids, everybody, the whole family. Fans who may have there might be 90 something year olds who read Action Comics when it first came out in 1938, who were like, "Oh, I loved Superman growing up. I want to see this." They got stuff there for them, and those like the boomers, like my parents who grew up and with the 50s Superman show, and were in their 20s when Christopher Reeve was doing his thing. And then there's again people like us, who we grew up on those, and then Superman the animated series and all of these versions. Then you want to get the little kids into them. Like I said, we brought a 4-year-old to see it, and luckily, that very scene where the guy dies from Russian roulette was so far away, and it was just that quick that it didn't bother him. So, yeah, I think Superman should be for everyone because he is for everyone. We should all be able to have fun and watch him. Like, if you want to get a darker superhero character, well, he's not superhero, but he's more of an anti-hero and he has no powers. You want to do that? Do the Punisher. That's for us older people. But Superman, he should be for kids at heart, and the lifelong fans.
I would add, in regards to the violence in the movie, if it was me, the writer or director or producer, I would have advocated to cut away when they did the Russian roulette, and instead of even showing it from like a distance, I would have just cut away or cut to black maybe. I was kind of like, whoa, like that was intense, but that's just me. Um,
That's a fair assumption. I mean, yeah, like I think the reason why I mean, there's probably a way they could have cut around it, like even maybe just like you just hear this, like you cut to a part where you cut to like a close up on Superman, or even like just like a two shot of Superman and Metamorpho when they're in the cage, have the sound go off, hear the thud of the body fall, and then their reactions. I think getting their reactions, especially Metamorpho's, was very important because that's where Metamorpho goes. He's like, man, I'm gonna kind of an accomplice to murder. So, and of course, Superman, he shed tears over, and this again goes back to his character and David Corenswet's performance. This guy only served him falafel. Like he doesn't really know the guy. He served him, he got falafel for saving some woman from being hit by traffic, but that affected him that deeply that someone died not because of him, but trying to, just for association and trying to help him. But to be honest, to Molly's credit, he was willing to go out on his sword or shield or whatever the saying is.
with the scene, to talk about some specific scenes, with Luther when Luther broadcasts the Kryptonian message and Superman is shocked to hear the second half, basically like his parents are urging him to conquer Earth, take many wives, and what's your take on that scene?
Personally, all right, well, as a fan, I don't like the idea that Jor-El and Lara want him to come and conquer Earth and dispatch of anyone who doesn't serve willingly because it makes them no different than the Superman villain General Zod. So if Zod exists in this universe, does that mean that the elves were in league with Zod, or is Zod even worse than they are? And it to me, it also goes kind of against even the message that they send. Like when you see the original part of the message, where it's like, "Our hope vitalizes our hearts," where like they sent him here to, give him a chance at life. So that's the thing about that. The comic fan of me doesn't like it, but story wise, I can buy it. I'm like, okay, fine, um, because it kind of emphasizes more the Kents that, and this is especially for the more for the less family friendly things like Invincible and the boys where you have Omni Man and you have Homelander. It just serves the purpose, like having this message and showing the Kents. It serves the purpose that it's really nurture, not nature, that makes Superman. Superman is who he is because of the Kents, and also this could open up some future avenues to explore, especially between Superman and Supergirl. Did Supergirl know? Did her parents know? Since obviously her brother is Jor-El's brother, and I'm sure we'll see a bit of those characters in her movie coming out in June.
It's like the theme of, Superman's choices and actions determine who he is. Ultimately, he does have a past, but like any being or person, like, what you do with your life day to day and your actions, your choices, that is going to kind of, define you basically. So I appreciated that theme in the movie. And even there was some flashbacks to when Clark was a kid, right?
Yeah,
And
but at the very, very end, like in that thing where he's like, oh, and also to that point, and to build on what you're mentioning, at first he's like, like he gets taken to the Fortress of Solitude when he's being healed, and he's doing what he does. He's like, oh yeah, I'm doing what I do. My parents say, yeah, like you're here to help. We love you and stuff like that. But then he replaces it with the parents who they nurtured this goodness within him. You see his memories as Clark as a young boy with the Kents, and I like that too because you get to see Jonathan and Martha, and you get to see little young Clark at Christmas, and I love the part where Jonathan is holding up Clark, and he's like, the young Clark is pretending to fly, because then that makes me think they're just playing, but that flight becomes a reality. And you get to see that, Jonathan Kent was having fun, smiling with with his son flying in the air, just playing. But then you imagine he's actually smiling, seeing his son flying across the sky when he goes and, does some good deed or something like that.
in regards to comedy or comic relief in the movie, what do you think are some of the funniest moments in this Superman 2025?
This might be a little bit morbid or mean spirited, but I find this part funny whenever Lex rages out because Superman escaped the pocket university, and he smashes the mug with the pencils and stuff. Pick that up, and then like he says he's speaking to, like, he throws the pencil at Eve, which is kind of like, wow, really, like you're really. But then he's talking to, I think it was Sydney, the one guy with the mustache, and he doesn't even look at the people. He just knocks the mug off the thing again to make them pick it up again. That was kind of meaner spirited, but it was to me, it always gets a laugh out of me. And I would say again, a lot of Green Lantern's lines, like especially when they're in the Hall of Justice. And he's like, I'm about 2 seconds away from forming a giant hammer and beating you both to death with it. But it's like just kind of like it's like a banter kind of line. And I love, speaking of which, I love the line where, and I forgot this should have gone back to the line section we were talking about, where he says to Lois, he says he trusts us because we're of the cloth, and she's like, of the cloth, and he just points to his costume, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. So I thought the humor, to me, the humor also feels a little, there were times like, and even like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which could be a little bit, there's a little bit of juvenile humor there. I feel like James Gunn toned it down for Superman, and he definitely didn't, it wasn't like super duper like you're trying to go for the laugh, except for like maybe that the garage door part and a few of like the lines at Steve Lombard, the sports reporter's expense. But I mean, Lombard's kind of a bully, and he gets his comeuppance in the comics all the time. But I would say, yeah, that's probably it. And of course the Supergirl part. I thought there's some amusing, funny bits in there. But I can't wait to see how they expand, like because that little bit of that's played for the last house. She's drunk and she crashes and she's like, "Why'd you move the door?" And he just points, "The door's over there." And we're gonna get to see where that that dynamic, I guess, comes into play.
Of like the major superheroes that we've seen live action movies made about, do you think Superman is the most family friendly superhero?
Wow. Uh, I don't know about the most. He might be tied with Spider-Man, who's again, he's my third dog. Like, and if you want to talk about Spider-Man, I could talk Spider-Man as well. But I think especially I think they're tied because honestly, when you look at the even the Tom Holland, the Tobey Maguire, the Andrew Garfield, you're always going to find moments in there where Spider-Man himself is very friendly, protective of children, and he's all about, he protects families, he protects parents, and especially the Tom Holland movies, it's kind of a lighter tone. You can let your kids enjoy it, except for maybe parts of it. Depends on the kid, of course, but the part where Green Goblin and Spider-Man No Way Home is just doing his thing, which is fantastic. But other times, it's like these are characters you can let your kids or your nephews or godchildren or whoever watch them because you can, they're friendly and they're colorful and they, because like I said, I mean, I could, I don't know. Like I said, when it comes to these characters, I love them so much. I've grown up with them, but it's like, so I kind of trip over my words with these characters. But like, you can see where they would be good examples. Like Batman, he's my number one, by the way. He might not always be the best example, being a paranoid, darker, more rough and tough vigilante. But Superman is, he's the guy who, he would get that squirrel out of the way. Spider-Man in Spider-Man Homecoming was giving a lady directions to somewhere, and she bought him a churro. I'd say Spider-Man and Superman are probably tied. I would also say Fantastic Four as of this latest version. They were pretty family friendly, especially considering the fact that they are a family and they are considered Marvel's first family. Um, I would say those three if I had to choose.
Wow.
Maybe Captain America, but
Yeah, no, that's Very eloquent. Thank you. Wow. Um, Filming in Cincinnati and filming in real locations. Any thoughts on some of the locations they chose?
Well, yeah, mm, I think it was. Yeah, I think they shot in Cleveland because they actually shot. They shot there because of, well, obviously probably tax rebates, but also because Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, his creators, created him in Cleveland. They actually have a museum. I think it was one of their houses is now a museum, and I've never been there. Now I got to go there. But yeah, of course, to me, I think that whenever you shoot any of these kind of movies, especially those that are set in big cities, go to real locations, get real buildings, get real architecture, all of that stuff. Like, because then when you go to these certain spots, you're like, oh, it kind of takes you back to that. To use another example, Dark Knight Rises was shot partially in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So whenever I go back there, near my high school was the part where they're all battling on the steps and where Batman starts to get the better of Bane. And then there's a part of it again near my high school where the tumblers are all rolling down the street before Bane does his big speech. So you're getting these actual locations. You could go to these actual locations, and then you're like, wow, like it really kind of makes more of a connection, at least in my opinion. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I love seeing stuff filmed on location, whether it's big cities or the countryside or somewhere in between. And yeah, it was nice to find that out that they filmed the movie there. And I feel like a lot of stuff, of course, is filmed in other cities, but and I think it always like just helps, as far as filmmaking as an art form,
Absolutely.
it just helps like build more of a community thing. The crew, the cast, you're spending time in this place. Of course, local people who live there are gonna work on the production or somehow be involved. Maybe an extra, maybe,
Yeah.
a stand-in or whatever, help with the food. So yeah, I thought that was a cool part of the movie. And as you said, it like in a way it contributes to like a city's history if a big movie like this is filmed there. So yeah, I think that's always like a good choice. Um, and man, we covered so a lot so far. And when you watch a movie, to step back from like the experience of seeing a movie in the theater at home, do you notice more the technical aspects or the filmmaking techniques, or if the movie's good enough, are you just immersed in the story and the characters? Are you how do you approach that, or what is that experience like? Because you watch a lot of films, you know about the craft of filmmaking.
I would say I think it really kind of sometimes it's spontaneous. That sometimes you'll notice, oh, look at this shot. Like one of the things I do like to do is, any shot that's kind of like interesting. I want to see, okay, especially in these big superhero movies where they're using effects. I want to see what's not the effect. How is this shot before you put in, you remove the wires, you put in this some buildings in the background. I want to see how these things are done. But for the most part, if I'm watching a movie and I'm just enjoying it, like again, I think it would have to depend on my mood. Where like, do I want to analyze it or do I just want to enjoy it? But for the most part, I love enjoying the 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 experience while I'm in it. Then afterwards, I could think, okay, how did they do this? Where did they shoot this? What is that? What is that? What is that?
You mentioned the comic book first started in 1938.
That's right.
I didn't realize it was
Yeah,
that long ago. Wow. Well, I
coming up
forgot.
on 9 years.
Jeez. Wow.
Yeah, this character's been around since, my grandma was a kid. So,
And
uh,
And for you, your entry point, your introduction, your portal into Superman, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, well, actually, my first glimpses, my dad had this white t-shirt with the George Reeves Superman on it. He's doing the little pose like that. So I'd seen him wear that, and if he has that, if he still has that shirt buried somewhere and I find it, I'm taking it. But I would see bits and pieces of like the very end of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies where he flies above the earth and stuff like that. And my brother had Superman pajamas at a certain point, so I'm like, and then Super Friends when it was on USA, I would see parts of that, and I'm like, okay, Superman, okay, whatever, cool. And it was 1996 or 95, late 95, that toy line, Superman, Man of Steel. They, like I said, like those kids channels when they hammered commercials, they made you want to buy them, and I was like, wow, like I was like, Superman looks cool. I was like, well, maybe I'll get this, and then got this, a friend of mine with the 13-inch Superman toy, and I was like, oh, I was like, wow, I really want this. I was like, I need to learn more about this guy, and I got the action figures with the comic book, and was watching Superman 4 from Blockbuster. I know this goes above, any younger people's heads, but we had the VHS tape and we had only the weekend. We had to return it on Sunday, put it in the Dropbox. But yeah, and yeah, I know Superman 4 is not a good movie, but it was again the way the character, he was a friend, he's saving people. He's saving Now that you think about it, that movie took place at the tail end of the Cold War. He's saving cosmonauts from like they get hit by a piece of debris. He goes and saves them and speaks to them in Russian. It's like, this guy is a friend to anybody good, and he's just a really nice guy. And then of course from there it's like, okay, I'm hooked. I'm starting to get on this. And then Superman animated series started coming out around that time on Kids WB. So it's just more Superman. Then it's waiting for movies, and then Smallville comes out when I'm 13. So I'm like, oh, younger Superman. And then there's a comic book store. Well, actually, I got into comic books because of the first X-Men movie. I was like, I want to read X-Men. And I was like, wait a minute, Superman is a comic book character. I always loved Superman. Let me start reading some Superman. And then in high school, there's a comic book store, a hop, skip, and a jump. So like 2003, I was onward. I was kind of just like, I was there pretty much every couple of weeks, just getting Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, all these characters. And I was reading that, watching Smallville, and then Superman Returns, the first Superman movie I could actually form literally a year after Superman 4 came out. So I'm like, okay, I have to see this movie. And it just keeps snowballing from there till well, now I'm like, I'm patiently waiting for Supergirl. And of course, I'm really excited for Man of Tomorrow because of who the villain is going to be. I don't know about you. What was your experience? What got you into Superman?
I think seeing the Christopher Reeve ones definitely at a younger age, and the comic books, like I said back at the beginning, and also just the sense that like Superman seemed a little more, I don't know what the word is, sane, or he
Yeah,
seemed
actually,
a little more chill than some of the other superheroes. So it was a nice like change of pace to look at some of those films, and even revisiting, or I don't even think I'd seen the whole movie, but watching earlier this year Superman Quest for Peace with Christopher Reeve. Watching that one was a cool experience, and I like, the message of it. And I know you mentioned it a little bit ago. Do you see some overlap or influence from Quest for Peace with Superman 2025?
I have a feeling that it was unintentional having instead of the clone Nuclear Man, you have the clone Ultraman, which I personally think that when he goes into the black hole, he's going to come out messed up and basically become a new Bizarro, which I would love to see. But then I also think that again, I don't think James Gunn would ever say, or at least he wouldn't admit, yeah, maybe Superman 4 is kind of subconsciously sunk in there, but when you have Superman intervening in these kind of affairs, maybe I personally think it's coincidental, but within the history of Superman, since the character is almost 9 decades old, you're gonna have some overlap, some retreading of bits, of course. It's just inevitable. But I obviously think it was done better in this new movie for obvious reasons.
What do you think is it about Quest for Peace that you'll rewatch it or return to that film from time to time?
You know what? A lot of it is just simply this was my gateway into Superman. This is one of two halves of my gateway into Superman. I can never turn my back on it. But then also compared to Superman 3, which I felt was again, it's a movie I'll watch because it's Superman and it's got some cool scenes and it's just got its own like so bad it's good vibe about it. Superman 4 tried to get back to more of a basics approach that Superman 3 had lost, where you have the focus is on Superman. He's the protagonist, what he wants to do, what are his desires, what's his mission. And they brought back Lex Luthor and and Gene Hackman, rest in peace. He was great in it regardless. And it's a shorter movie. It's not, don't take it seriously. It's just kind of stupid fun in a way. Because I mean, Nuclear Man throws the Statue of Liberty down upon the city. Superman catches it, and but that you like to see, yeah, Superman would catch it, and then he rises it back up and flies it back to where he's going to his thing, and I think it's Mount Etna. He makes that erupt, and then Superman, cuts off a thing, stops it up with a mountain, and then uses the super breath to blow out. So it's still much in the spirit of Superman. It's just missing the technical ingredients to it. Like if it was completely off base, I would probably not revisit. Like a movie like Catwoman, I would never revisit. I've seen that once, don't need to see it again. Superman 4, because of my love of the character and because they're still they're trying to make it what we know of the character.
For me, it was like, what other superhero movie that's live action is the superhero trying to get rid of all the nuclear weapons in the world? And, like I that was very unique. I thought that was like a good pitch for like anybody to check it out, even just for fun, like you said.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's obviously also wish fulfillment. 'Cause I mean, I don't know anyone on Earth even nowadays who wouldn't be, if Superman literally, especially we know him, he's gained our trust, stuff like that. They say, yeah, listen, give me all your nukes, we'll get rid of them so that we don't have to live under the threat of nuclear destruction. Like only like the warmongers, like the people Lex Luthor was trying to sell missiles to would be upset. Like they would be the only people upset at that. Everybody else would be like, yeah, please take these nukes so that we don't blow ourselves up.
Maybe give some time if you want, if we could talk about Lex Luthor a little more in Superman 2025.
Oh, yes. All right. So just like with Rachel Brosnahan and with the guy who played Jimmy Olsen, who I actually think is the best live action Jimmy Olsen we've had. I'm talking about movies, TV. Uh, Nicholas Hoult is Mount Rushmore of Luthor portrayals with Michael Rosenbaum from Smallville, Clancy Brown from the DC animated universe, and I'm gonna probably say the actor from the show Superman and Lois. Because I mean, he was such a he had the even his speech and his mannerisms was like you could tell this he played him exactly like this guy's a genius. This guy knows what he's doing. He's charismatic but he is such a hater. Like he knows how to schmooze a room and stuff like that, but he's such a hater. He's so you want to see him get his comeuppance, but then there's the scene at the end where his misdeeds are exposed, and he's kind of teary eyed, and this is to Holt's like his credit. He made me almost be like, oh man, like I kind of feel a little bad for him because he's defeated and he's upset and like he's got tears in his eyes. But then you're like, wait a minute, this guy just shot somebody like a day ago, like, and he's abusing his girlfriend by throwing a pencil at her and has all these people locked in cages in this pocket universe. So he played the villainy very well. I bought that this was a genius level intellect and the smarminess, like whenever he's sipping on like I guess coffee or something like that, Superman bursts into the office and he's like, "Where's the dog?" And he's so calm and cool about it, even though he knows exactly what he did. And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And like just the fact that he would literally stand up face to face with Superman, like, and just lie completely to his face, except he says, ugly dog in a cape, and just the fact that he could twist things around, and like the kids like to say, the aura farm, he could do the aura farming, like when he's walking through, like all the blades are going whizzing past him as all the Superman robots are being destroyed, and he's written like the comic book version where he's xenophobic and where he says like he's not a man, he's an it, and nothing's felt right, and the motivation was also out of All Star Superman and other comic books where he's like, no, like Earth is for humans, you're an alien, we don't want you, like you take away your, like every time these people praise you, you're taking away from us humans. So I'm very excited to see these two who don't like each other have to team up in Man of Tomorrow. That's gonna be. I'm already predicting it's gonna be a highlight of the sequel.
Building upon earlier the lessons to be learned from Superman 2025 or whatever your age is, if you watch this film, what could people expect to learn or to at least, you know, whether it's something about metaphorically or allegories or symbolically, just, things about life, things about, how to behave as a person. What lessons do you think of for this film that it could, present to someone?
I that one of the two big ones. You can forge your own path as a person. Like you might have people might try to set you up to do what they want you to do, but you have to do your own thing, and then also stay true to yourself. Like Superman is a guy who embraces that kindness and has hope for people, even when the world and other people are like, come on, man, you shouldn't be this way, and he's like, nah, I'm gonna be this way because that kind of starts to rub off on Metamorpho and the Justice Gang, and probably even to an extent Lois and other people. And of course, all those people he saved, they, like the kid has the banner, he stands strong, even and he's like, Superman, Superman, Superman. But because he stays true to his convictions. And that yes, be a kind person, whenever you can, and be as kind as you can whenever you can.
The Isn't there a reference to His Girl Friday in the movie? Just to kind of go back to some of the references or points that the film makes. Um, I think it's like Clark and Lois and like equal matches to each other, kind of like the romantic side. I,
Oh
I
yeah.
think it was like the 1940 movie His Girl Friday. There's some references there. Do you remember that?
I mean, I couldn't tell you off top what those references are, but I mean, I would say this. They would definitely be, it wouldn't surprise me because Lois has always been that kind of, because again, she's always been that go-getter and she will go to bat for the people she cares for. And she's all about uncovering the truth. She might be a little more cynical than he is, but they balance each other out. She's more, you know, down to earth. He's more up in the sky, metaphorically and physically. But they definitely, one of the things I do like is that they do treat each other as equals, and they do, I liked after their fight, they do apologize to each other, and she brings him cocoa, and he tries to do something for her. He tries to make breakfast for dinner for her. She brings him cocoa whenever he's, after he comes in from trying to find crypto and everybody's fighting the big imp outside. They're a good supportive, couple, and she's a go-getter. And there's really no other way to do Lois other than that.
I want to read a quote from James Gunn, the writer director Superman 2025. He said this in April 2025. How can you take a character like this who's perceived as old-fashioned by many? There have been so many different permutations of the character throughout the years. So how do you do it for a modern audience? I knew what I wanted to do in creating a story that was both utterly human and utterly fantastic. It has all the fantastic elements that we've never really seen in a Superman movie. The flying dog, the giant kaiju, pocket universes, science and sorcery, and all these things that were in the old Max Fleischer cartoons. Yeah, I think that's, touches on a lot of the stuff we mentioned. Do you have any thoughts on that kind of quote?
Well, I'd say that he did it well because there's so many concepts that still need to be explored in Superman movies, future Superman movies. But it's like to take these things and distill it down the way he did and still have something that Superman movies haven't done, really, in my opinion, it's the magic of it. And it still has those messages of being kind and, staying true to yourself. And it takes what we love and it makes it something something that can be enjoyed by more than just the super fans, because there are people like I sometimes I'll go on YouTube and watch people reacting to this movie and they seem to enjoy it a lot, and I'm like, this is what we Superman fans have been saying about the character. Come on board the Superman train. You're welcome to join us with this. This is now you see why we love this character so much and his world.
The the marketing of the film, the early posters or early images, do you remember anything that stood out for you, or is it just kind of the main poster that you kind of think of?
Well, one thing about me is when it comes to movies, I know I'm gonna see. I don't watch any trailers, so I didn't watch the trailers for this movie. I'm not watching them for Supergirl or Man of Tomorrow or any future more, like not watching for Spider-Man Brand New Day, but like I would say one poster that really sticks out to me, and you'd have to find it online, is it's Superman, like he's flying towards towards whoever the viewer, and there's a bunch of the other characters there, and that kind of gives off a like some of the Christopher Reeve Superman movie posters, one where he's like this flying towards the camera, and then for Superman 2, it's that kind of pose. So instead of having him look kind of like looking kind of that way, but having him that's that retro feel. You're going back to and then to that move, to the movie's credit. they're going back to what works and what the fans loved about the character. They're going back to that bright, optimistic, hopeful, colorful, fun, fantastical Superman. And they're not saying, "Oh, we're ashamed of this. We have to grow him." We're like, "No, this is what he is. This is what, you know, this is what makes him who he is. We don't abandon the past. We accept the past. We embrace the past and use that past to go into the future. We take that past into the future with us."
With there being so many long gaps in between making live action Superman movies, do you think that builds to the hype? Like, would you want to see a Superman movie every year? Or is it better to have that space or distance like multiple years in between films?
I think space is needed because then at least you could have a year gap like how, Man of Tomorrow is coming out in 2027, but we're not getting a Superman movie next year, although we are getting Supergirl, but have a little, let Superman, be a little, cool off a little bit and then start building the hype back up. 2, 3 years is fine. I think one of the things that kind of set the film franchise back a little bit, like to where why he's not as popular as Batman or Spider-Man is because from 1987 to 2006, you had that gap where there were no Superman movies whatsoever. That kind of hurt the character. Now that you got this really universally accepted Superman movie, you want to keep that hype going. But you don't want to like keep rushing them out. Otherwise, it's not gonna feel special seeing him back on the screen. It's gonna be like, oh well, it's Superman. Just like how with some of the Marvel movies, the hype isn't all there because some of these characters constantly, it's constant Marvel. So it's like get a little tired and then you start getting more selective. Whereas if you take your time and make the fans wait for it, you're kind of like, oh, I can't wait to see him again. Make us impatient.
I commend you for seeing the film in the theater. I feel like watching movies in a movie theater, some would say, attendance is down or it's down compared to recent years. Do you have anything to say about that topic?
Yeah, well, it is. I think realistically, streaming is mainly what is hurting the movie theater. Certain movies, okay, they might not be necessary. I don't want to say that because I am a big proponent of the movie theater. That's why I go to see like the movies I anticipate most. I go to the movie theater, and it's just the true format is seeing it on the big screen. I could say that. All right, I grew up on Ghostbusters. That I watched that VHS to the point where I could recite the movie backwards and forward. When I saw it on the big screen for its 30th anniversary, it just felt special because that was the true format. Same with the Back to the Future trilogy when they re-released that in 2015. I'd seen those movies, I had the DVD. I saw those in the theater. I gained more of an appreciation for them. And other movies that were or movies I hadn't seen in full, or like Enter the Dragon or Scarface or something like that. Those aren't family friendly, but the point is, you're seeing them in their true format on that big screen. You feel it's more immersive. Like that's what it's supposed to be. Like even though I was like two when, and I was in the theater when I saw this, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990, saw it for its 30th, 5 years ago. And I was just as enthralled, maybe a little bit more, because that's where it's supposed to be. That's why I don't want everything to just go to streaming, and I don't want movie theaters to die because you need that bigger experience. And also, when you get movies like Spider-Man No Way Home, when you get a big reaction when Matt Murdock shows up. You see the cane and you see him, ah, Then when Andrew Garfield pops through the portal, and then when Toby is like, so you're like, you're feeling that in like any kind of Christopher Nolan movie. Like I said, with this Superman movie, I don't know that on the first time that I saw it, if the first time I saw it was on a TV screen, I don't know that I would have had such a visceral reaction to hearing that music because it's just not, it just doesn't hit the same way. The movie theater is just a different kind of animal. I'm sure our friend Brian would agree with me.
Yeah, I think you would. And
Now,
I would add that it's a different experience, seeing something in the theater. I think there is space and room for streaming and movie theaters. Maybe maybe there's something to be said for the amount of time that something is streaming compared to when it was released in theaters. And I mean, there is the temptation to say, well, it's out in the theaters today, but it's going to be streaming in like 3 weeks, So it can be an economic challenge for people. That's, I think, obvious. And I think there's still room for theaters to say, okay, well, Tuesday is going to be like the discount day, not just matinee, but all day, evening prices too. So if you really want to see the movie, try to see it on Tuesday or at Tuesday evening. It'd be cool if they could offer other kinds of, I don't know what to call it, sales or
perks.
days where you could, come and see the film and you don't have to worry about like going broke by the time you get popcorn or food and snacks and movie tickets for your family, perhaps.
Exactly. And like I mean, I know that I think theaters do have like like they do have discounts for kids and seniors, but it's like, in my opinion, why should the Super Mario Galaxy movie, a ticket for that for kids cost anything more than like, I'll be generous, maybe $8, $9? Why should that? I think technically for kids, $5 because I mean, hey, they're not paying for it. The adults are paying for it. And although I mean, I don't have kids, not gonna have kids, but if I go see that movie, fine, I'll pay what I pay for it. It's just me. I'll have my snacks and whatnot. But yeah, they should offer more incentives for theaters, and realistically, they need to say like it should be like a hard, like a moratorium or mandate, I should say, where streaming, it's not going to stream in 2 weeks or even a month. It's got to be 2 months. It's got to be a hard 2 months. Same with the physical media, like maybe 2 months in the theater, then it comes to streaming, and then maybe the month after it comes to streaming, you can get your Blu-rays. And they need to keep making Blu-rays and 4K Blu-rays and such because I love collecting the physical media just in case when, suppose I can't have a streaming service, got my Blu-ray, which again, I got Superman on Blu-ray. Uh, so again, I can watch it whenever I want. Also got the digital copy with it, but I think they need to keep these things alive and don't just let it be like, oh well, we're just gonna like I don't want to see Man of Tomorrow streaming in 30 days. I want to see it have a big healthy theatrical run. That way we get more Superman movies like that and more DC movies like maybe we'll get a new Flash film in the future or Aquaman and whenever Batman when the Brave and the Bold movie comes out, that'll hopefully give it legs and let people have fun with it and find their time to it.
One of my hopes, and maybe this is just me getting lost in a nostalgic feedback loop, but I'll say that to begin, is I wish like video stores came back. If they're gonna keep making Blu-rays and DVDs and stuff, I would hope that maybe even as an experiment, people try to bring the video rental stores back because that process of like renting it from a place, supporting a local business. I remember that as a kid, again, the nostalgic feedback loop thing. But that was, it kind of made it more like an event, or they only had so many copies of this movie, and then you just got to wait until somebody returns it. And hopefully people don't steal them or keep them out too long. So, because it seems like right now, maybe if you're lucky with your local public library, you can still rent DVDs, Blu-rays, and they might get new releases too, like especially the bigger films. So at least we still have that option to rent films. And the streaming thing, I would add that I've noticed recently some of the services now have ads, and they didn't have ads when they first started. So that means you need to pay more to have the ad-free version, even though you're already paying for the base level subscription. So I think that is another reason to have the physical media, because then there's no ads and you can watch it at your own pace or leisure. And if, the internet is not stable, or if it goes out or whatever, you got the DVD or the Blu-ray, and you could still enjoy a night with your friends, your family, whomever. And so there's, at least right now, we're lucky to have those elements to still enjoy, the art of cinema.
Agreed. And like one of the things that I loved about Blockbuster was on a Friday night, coming back from school or whatever, maybe we're gonna go pick up a pizza, then go to Blockbuster, have your movie, and then you have it for the weekend, and you get to enjoy it. You got to watch it like that. Like it almost forces you to watch it like that because otherwise you just wasted money to just put it, back in the box or whatever. But yeah, I would love to see that. But hey, listen, vinyl kind of came back. There's still vinyl available. There's certain comic book stores in a mall here in New York or wherever, and you'll see vinyl. So maybe home media can make a comeback. Like I make it a point to get the movies that I really enjoyed on Blu-ray. And luckily Walmart still has them. So Walmart, keep being our champion. Keep with the Blu-rays. That's how I got Superman. I think actually I literally the day it came out on Blu-ray, I went picked it up and I was like, yes, thank goodness I have it. No, yeah, I grabbed it like it was like the Shankara stones in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I grabbed it, looked at it, and tucked it away. Don't do that for any other ones. I I'm a big proponent like the libraries who I don't know what their schedule is, but suppose that, a library doesn't get, suppose the Spider-Man Brand New Day Blu-ray comes out in like, I don't know, November of next year. What if they don't get it until January of 2027? That's why you need the Blu-ray and you need the Blockbuster type of place where you can rent it like that. If you don't, especially if you can't necessarily afford the streaming or whatever, or you want to watch it before you buy it, I think that needs to be a thing.
To pivot to something like radio and radio shows or radio entertainment, did they make years ago like Superman radio series? Was that a thing at some point?
Absolutely. There's one, it was called The Adventures of Superman. And in fact, parts of that were taken and incorporated into the comic books. Like, I believe Jimmy Olsen might have originated on the radio show, and then they incorporated him into the comics. And then Perry White, the editor in chief of the Daily Planet, and uh, Kryptonite was one of them. There was a story that an unpublished story called K Metal from Krypton was supposed to be it was kind of a precursor to that, but Kryptonite came from the radio show to give the voice actor Bud Collyer some time off. And they even had a story in which like this guy named Stetson Kennedy infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan in real life. And through the show, he would like expose their secrets and stuff like that, and it basically made the clan kind of like look like fools and look ineffectual, and expose them for the monsters that they are. I mean, well, there are people who can quit the clan and stuff like that, so I don't want to call them all monsters, but it was responsible for an actual change and actual good stories, and of course, it actually also inspired a comic book from like I don't know less than a decade ago called Superman Smashes the Klan, in which Superman fights the Klan and protects these Korean American kids.
Wow. I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Um, do you think back to the movie theater experience in the 2020s here, and do you think maybe people would be more motivated to go to the movie theater if there were more events like, Superman 2025, we're going to have James Gunn, the director, the writer. He's going to do a special live commentary during the movie, not talk like nonstop for, over 2 hours, but here and there, he's going to share some anecdotes or, speak, and kind of experiment with that live element and showing the movie. Do you feel like that would maybe entice people to kind of
I
go more?
I believe so, and I also believe that you gotta give the people what they want too. Like in 2027, they're gonna actually show. Apparently, they're gonna show the original unaltered theatrical version of Star Wars for the 50th anniversary. That's something that we're not seeing on the big screen because George Lucas is like, we don't want, he's like, oh no, the special editions are the only versions going forward. But no, now you're giving the fans what they want, which is this special treat. Give the fans special treats. And also, I know they're probably not going to do this. They don't want to do this, but got to bring the prices down. Make it so that people could say, okay, I can afford this. I can afford to go to this. Like matter of fact, and like I said, when it comes to the special, like you said, like these special kind of events, it doesn't even have to be big, super duper big theater chains, but you know, even these little things have these special events. Like Brian and a mutual friend of ours, we all on Sunday we went and they showed at the Paoli Center of Arts in Manhattan. They showed the Star Wars holiday special for a bunch of us to watch and make fun of and laugh at. Do stuff like that, but for other movies, and you'll bring people back to the theater. Like I think the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 1990 movie, came out this year for its 35th, and it was only supposed to be a couple of days, but people kept going back, so it extended for like a week or two. So bring those kind of movies back in, and not that not that I have a reason to, but I'm going to plug Fathom Events because that's how I give wind of like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade playing in the theater. Do bring more of those classics back to bigger screens and and advertise, let people know these things are going on. Maybe get your 2 for 1s or something like that, and celebrate like they're gonna have Avengers Endgame back in the theater next September or this coming September for Avengers Doomsday. Do stuff like that. Promotions.
You made me think of like, would you be more excited for like a Superman movie, live action Superman movie with like even less special effects and more practical effects and more, filming on location? Would that make the film more exciting, or do you like the blending of the digital effects, the special effects, computerized effects with live action?
I think realistically, like if James Gunn said to me, Nick, do you have a Superman movie idea? Do you want to make it? Can you make it? And I was like, all right, well, if you want me to make this idea, a lot of it would be location shooting, actual sets, not many green or blue screens or stuff like that. Now, obviously, for the flying and stuff like that, you kind of got to do that stuff, but actual on the ground places, things you can touch, sets you can that they have to build. You know, the one thing I'm not happy about is how they're going to try to start implementing all this AI. Get it out of there. Get it out of there. Real people, real extras, sets, props. To be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of when costumes are just like pajama dots. I understand for certain characters you have to do that, but what they did with Metamorpho, that was the actor in a costume. Use as much practical as you can, and then and wires, use wire work, use the tuning fork thing where they doing all that. That's fine. Then when practical simply can't do it, that's where you let CGI take over.
Yeah, I agree. And I think part of the joy of filmmaking and collaborating on such creative projects is, that the textures that are involved, the costumes, the sets, the lighting, you know, all this stuff. Um, and, if it is a big movie, yeah, you're going to have all these other people, extras, location people, food, catering,
Yeah.
and makeup, hair, costume. So it's it's part of the way you build community making films. And then if somebody, when they see this motion picture, it's like, whoa, like I can kind of feel the textures of the world they created. And it does, I think, lend a certain appreciation that you get when the movie is approached from that kind of aesthetic.
Yes, absolutely. Like there's when you know that there's stuff that was actually in camera, it just makes it feel that much more special. Especially when you notice, no, that was actually practically done. That wasn't just some little, I don't care if it's like a special effect, it's not CGI. It's still like, if a spark shoots out or something and it's an actual spark, it's not, a fake CGI spark.
You mentioned the 19, is it 1990, right? The first Ninja Turtles live action movie? We
That's
had
right.
some time, we have some time left, so I mentioned that movie because I just rewatched it like a couple weeks ago. So it's still fresh in my mind. I saw it as a kid in the theater and the sequels. I remember, those were like events. What is your take seeing that Ninja Turtles movie, you know, nowadays? Like how does it compare to your memory, I guess, or recollection when you saw it as
Well,
a kid?
this is another movie where I watched that VHS so much, and to the point where I have that committed to memory too. And to me, it's the best live action Ninja Turtles movie we got so far. It's the best Ninja Turtles movie we got so far because, like Superman, it's based more on the comics and it's made by somebody a filmmaker who's like, yeah, I took a look at the material and was like, yeah, we want to embrace this. Yeah, they put elements from the cartoon in there, the 1987 cartoon, like all the Ninja Turtles wearing different color bandanas, whereas in the comic they all wore red bandanas at that point. And April being a newswoman, and they those are about it. Maybe a few things here or there, but a lot of it was, they said, okay, we're going to take these storylines, meld them into a story about families and how, you know, the Turtles and Splinter, they're obviously the good guys, but they represent the good side of family, and Shredder with his he says, "I am your father," like kind of like Darth Vader, but like he's using them these kids for evil to join the Foot Clan. So you're taking universal themes that people can understand, melding them with the source material. Like that to me is why it's like I will literally always recommend that movie. And you can say, "Oh, it's a kids movie, so what? It's still cool. It's still an awesome movie, and it's the best of the Ninja Turtles movies." And practical sets like the sewer set. and the rooftops and the farmhouse and everything. And they actually shot on location in New York. You see it whether you're in their Columbus Circle and they're downtown near the courthouse, and they shoot like I think they shot like abandoned subway platform whenever April's surrounded by the Foot. Raph comes to her rescue. And by the way, Raph, my favorite Ninja Turtle, best Ninja Turtle, and we could debate about that.
I appreciate I like your take on it. I appreciate with the Ninja Turtles 1990 movie, and as a noirish feel to the lighting and the sewer locations, the nighttime scenes, and
Yeah,
it has an edge to it that I suppose for 1990 coming out of the 80s that in some ways reflects the times or they were tapping into some kind of way of the way some of the real locations looked and yeah, just being this live action movie, even though it's from a comic book, they really did bring it to life and it has this magical, enduring quality.
yeah. To your point, when it comes to noirish look, I think that is a byproduct of the original comic book, and also yeah, like when you see like yeah, the sewer, I would imagine it would be kind of dark down there, like through some of those tunnels. But then also when the subway, whenever Abe misses her train, it's way darker than any subway that I've been in Manhattan or even into Brooklyn or Queens. Like you go, or not necessarily subway in Queens, but like the subway, it is so darkly lit down there. It's like you don't want to be down there. But that's a cool aesthetic choice because that allows that, it's kind of leads to that like, oh my God, April's in danger kind of thing because all these foot ninjas show up and they're in their dark clothes, having the harsh lighting that we would have in the subway now doesn't give off that same effect and that same tone of danger. And then when Raphael rushes in and does his thing, it just helps out a lot that it's darker there and has these darker areas.
With the lighting in the Superman 2025 movie, the lighting, the cinematography, is there anything that, really jumps out for you as far as the scenes from that film?
I would say the Fortress of Solitude. I think the way it looks is exactly how it should look like with that lighting. You got that kind of bluish tones to it. Um, it does feel like an ice palace, but like with the yeah, like a more modernized. It's not just a bunch of like crystals like in the Christopher Reeve movies. It feels like there's an actual like there's a laboratory, there's a this, there's that. Which I mean, in like has computer consoles, and again, these are things that are taken from the comic books. Like if you were to go and read some of these, especially more modern ones where they added the crystal aesthetic. I'd say probably around the mid 2000s they did it because otherwise before that it was like a mountain, like just a mountain with a bunch of rooms and such. But they kind of married the two aesthetics of the Christopher Reeve movies and the comic books, and it get to that comic book aesthetic, brighter colors, warmer colors here, colder colors, this and that, and he it feels more inviting as opposed to like something that's a little more washed out or harsher or darker or something like that.
By the way, I like your background and how you dressed for
I
the
did
occasion today.
exactly. I did that on purpose. I had to like with Star Trek where I had to put the bird of prey, the bounty from that, and then the Bat Cave from the '66 Batman. So I had to, and like I said, this is my favorite version of the Fortress of Solitude. I love how when they move the fortress toward the sun in order to put him in the direct like line of the sun, and then the like lenses to focus that the sunlight to hit that beam at him and heal him like rapidly. And there's another thing I want to say about this movie is like one of the criticisms Superman had received over the years is he's too powerful, he's this, that, and the other. But it's like, again, if you knew the comic books, you know there are villains who can hurt him. To us humans, yeah, we can't really do much to him except like sonic attacks and nuclear weapons. But you get these super villains who can hurt him all the time. And, he had broken bones. Like in that first scene, they're like, oh, you had a bunch of broken bones and internal bleeding, and, you're ruptured this, that, and the other. And then, like I said, they gave him that super concentrated dose, and like you hear things getting cracked back together. And then I love when he falls off the chair and he's like, golly, like he just went through it. But then he gets back up in the Superman Robot 4, or Gary, as we know, says, you're only 83% healed. He says, no, it's no can do. 4, got to get back to the fray. That's Superman.
It's beautiful and almost magical how the Superman character, from a comic book back to 1938, and I mean, it's just like the way imagination, reading a comic book and then somebody's like, all right, I can make a live action version of this. Making an animated version is one thing, or a cartoon, but somebody's saying, I want to make a live action version. Um, it's really remarkable. Maybe easy to take for granted and just be like, oh, well, it's been around for a while. But I think, yeah, it's still, much respect, admiration to comic book artists and people who really can come up with these kind of characters. Do you, I guess, furthermore, this is like a double question or double
Mhm.
kind of topic, but with your own passion, knowledge, and the way you can even, talk about all this stuff, it's brilliant and poetic. You don't have to give anything away, but do you yourself write your own ideas for comic books, or have you made finished comic books yourself?
I mean, when I was a kid, I'd say, yeah, like when I was a teenager, I did a few little things, but not really anything like that. I'm more of like, I like to read and consume the materials, and yeah, it's just like, I don't know, it's just kind of fell out of doing that in high school just because, just, but yeah, I love enjoying the material and interacting and engaging with it. And especially like when I saw this movie leading up to it, I was like, okay, let me go back and reread Superman for All Seasons and then read All Star Superman, like basically just cram them in order to, kind of be hyped for it, pregame for it. And I did the same thing for Fantastic Four. I read the 3 issues that had the Galactus storyline.
It's impressive, man. I mean, you're a real fan. Like people say they're fans of thing. You're like a real fan.
Yeah, but that's the one thing is like fans have garnered kind of a bad reputation where it's like I try not to judge anybody who doesn't read the comics or play the video games and such like that, or watch the cartoons all like that, and they may have maybe like a Batman fan because they watch the movies and they like the movies. They're like, oh yeah, I like Batman. All right, hey, cool. I mean, I've caught myself. Matter of fact, when I was back home for Thanksgiving, watching Spider-Man No Way Home, and my parents were in the room, and my mom was, watching it. I would just, like kind of find myself dropping these, little factoids here and there, and I'm like, wow, I really am that, like, I don't know a lot about this, compared to these people. But it's like I don't want to, because again, comic book getting into it is not the easiest gateway, because some like Spider-Man, Batman, Wonder Woman, all these characters, and then all these storylines over the years, it's kind of hard to find a jumping on point. So it's like if someone were to ask me, oh, what how where should I start with Superman? I'll just say here, check out these trade paperbacks or graphic novels, if you want to call them that. Boom, boom, boom. I'd be happy to help, but I'm not going to judge you if you don't.
Wow. Did we miss anything from Superman 2025? Is there any scenes or technical elements, mechanical elements we should mention, or anything? I'm trying
Uh,
to think.
there's just one, I think one more thing I'd like to point out is that I'm glad that the Kents, both of them, are alive in this because in the pre-crisis on Infinite Earths continuity, they both die. They die of like some mysterious illness that Superboy, because Clark was Superboy and then Superman in those days, accidentally, brings back with him. Ma dies, then Pa dies. But then in Superman the movie from 78, Pa dies of a heart attack, and Ma is still living, and then she dies off screen before Superman 3. Man of Steel, Pa Kent dies because he lets himself get sucked up into a tornado so that Clark doesn't reveal that he has superpowers, and goes and rushes in and saves him. A lot of people don't like it. I personally don't like it. I think it could have been written better that he saves him, and that's the catalyst for him going out into the world and deciding to be at least be a savior who may not be public facing yet, but then obviously has to be public facing and become Superman. Whatever. That's what I would do. This one, just like in the post crisis continuity, the Kents get to see their boy be Superman. Both of them. Jonathan's still there. He's still alive. You see this in the show Lois and Clark. You see it in Superman the animated series. Now you get, and I think in this I would recommend this show called My Adventures with Superman. It's kind of like an anime version of Superman. It's got 2 seasons. Third season's on the way. Jonathan Kent's still alive to see him. You get to see he gets to come back and interact with his parents as a full grown adult. I love the fact that both of them are still alive, but they don't just treat the father like, hey, he's disposable, and he can still be there for his son.
With Superman 2025, I was just thinking about, as you were talking, the sense of time, adulthood, family, and all the topics and issues that could, occur within any family. What is there anything we haven't said or mentioned that would connect with some of those ideas?
Well, I would potentially say, even though I feel like this isn't the most, it doesn't get much for parents, and he does to them, but he held them up in at least some high regard. But him embracing that he has known the Kents. Like, I'm glad that it's not to the detriment of, he calls them Ma Pa. They call it. It's funny, like whenever they after the message gets shown to the public, like he sees his phone and there's like 20 calls from them, and it shows that they're loving, caring parents. They wanted to check in on their boy, so that family element of the people who love and care for you, those are definitely, I'd say, remember them and always cherish those people. And the fact, and also I do like, again, regarding family, he does have his cousin around. Even though his cousin likes to go and get drunk on other planets, he's in contact with her.
Yeah.
And we're gonna see him in Supergirl at some point.
Do you are you able to mention any, Thanksgiving just passed, we're in the holiday season. Are there any like annual screenings with family and friends that you usually do around the holiday season that are family friendly, that are worth mentioning, that you want to mention?
Yes. Every Christmas Eve, sometimes my dad will join in, sometimes not. but my mother and I have this tradition of watching It's a Wonderful Life every Christmas Eve when it's on NBC. Like she will stay up till it's eight to 11 because it has commercials. We always do that. And then of course throughout the day, one of my parents, maybe my brother, will be in the room and we're watching A Christmas Story. Have to watch A Christmas Story. That's one of the best. It's probably my favorite Christmas movie. No, all due respect to Batman Returns. A Christmas Story is my favorite Christmas movie. Maybe I could be convinced if it's Home Alone too, but I think A Christmas Story takes it.
Wow. Yeah. I think of Christmas Carol, the 1938 version. I remember watching that like Christmas Eve on TV, and then eventually the VHS. Yeah, that one I think was one of those yearly holiday ones screenings. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I have as far as Superman 2025. Um, I guess the last thing is just like, yeah, this is I'm glad to talk about a 2025 family friendly movie. Sometimes people are like, they don't make, they're like, come on, man, they don't make live action family friendly movies anymore. Like that kind of stopped in the 90s or early 2000s. And a lot of stuff's animated now, of course. So it is refreshing to have something from this year, 2025, that families could watch. It is a PG-13 movie, and I guess my own hope is they would make more live action family friendly movies. And I think I don't know, movies do have this kind of capacity to teach us things. It's not always easy to like just lecture people and expect them to like listen. It's sometimes easier to have a lesson in a story. And if it can be, mixed with entertainment and still have an art to it, and that's perhaps the beauty of cinema, and to be able to share the experience like we said numerous times today, going to the movie theater with family, friends, loved ones, and also strangers in the theater with you. Having this experience watching the movie together is still one of those, I would say, joys in life that go back to the silent movie era, like just going
Yeah.
to the theater. Maybe there's a live orchestra or piano player, or maybe nobody's doing the music. You're just seeing the silent movie and the images together, and that's how you're spending some time. So I would say, yeah, like there's still reason to go, have that type of cinematic journey or voyage or experience together.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm especially, like I said, when it comes to some of these superhero movies, I'm glad we have movies like Spider-Man and Superman that can be family friendly. Really, they have enough teeth for us adults, but it's also, enough for, kids, to create the new generation of Superman fans, or, whatever other characters, like we need those. And it could be good bonding experiences for kids. And it just, could take away from, oh man, inflation, the wars and ice and this and that. And then I could put on a Superman and an adult, I could be like, I don't, it's gone, it's out of my mind for 2 hours. And, I don't could be a little bit of a lighter release. Yeah, we could have our Punishers and our Deadpools and so on and so forth, and movies like I don't know the Wrestler or whatever. Let us have those, but we could also have these too, like both. There is a movie like this.
I like how you said, it lets us have this experience together, perhaps escape, or maybe it's a more healthy escape from the harsher aspects of life and the, yeah, like, I don't know. It's just when I think about people bonding, and I would say to encourage, more face-to-face experiences. And it seems like maybe it's easy or tempting to get caught up in just, you know, the commentary on cinema or the commentary on art or life, and not really like actually living it and participating on some level, collaborating, whether it's a creative project, a comic book, a movie, a music, visual art, sculpture, dance, like all these things I think really do, especially as people age and get older, like it helps people, stay healthy mentally, physically, and, it's motivating to kind of have those experiences, discussions, and to be able to really, have something like that to do. So, um, yeah, I think that's all I could think of for now. I think hopefully, if James Gunn sees this episode, he's satisfied and maybe impressed. I think he'd be impressed if somebody shows it to him. Hopefully, he'll get to see it.
Man, that would be amazing if he saw that. And I would just say one thing I would say if I could to him is thank you for bringing us this kind of movie. Thank you for bringing Superman back to the the public consciousness, getting him talking. Because I mean, Lord knows that character deserves it. And thank you for making the next movie's villain Brainiac. Oh, when I heard that news that this villain who could have been the main villain of Superman 3 but wasn't, is now going to be. I got super excited. Now I'm kind of impatiently waiting for this movie and still enjoying this movie that he released in July.
Wow. Well, thanks, Nick. I appreciate your time and your knowledge, your energy, your enthusiasm. Um,
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love doing this. I love talking about
well,
these movies that I grew up watching, like
yeah.
Back to the Future, and like I said, we were talking a little bit about Ninja Turtles, and maybe expand upon the Ninja Turtles trilogy next time. Who knows?
And we'll have our buddy Brian back for an episode soon. To give
Yes.
everybody something to look forward to, a little, a little, a little bit of motivation to tune in again. And yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed listening. And until next time, thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, man. Love you.
Hey, take it easy, man. Love you too, bro.